But it's all believable. As a matter of fact, I've had it researched by people in Metro North, and they said that this could be done. They managed to get this engine as far south as Metro Park in New Jersey. And then the story unfolds. They take the man to Washington, D.C. He's interrogated by a Senate investigating committee. And because being an executive like he is, nobody believes that he did anything wrong. And that's how the story then unfolds. And in the end, there's a trial. And in the trial of the father and son, for the crime of hijacking a train.
Wow.
And there's a surprise ending.
Ah, good. Surprise endings are good.
Right.
All right, so then after Commuter Train,
Yep.
Now this came out
About
years?
2009, I would say. 2009.
And you got some very good response.
Yes. It's available on Amazon, and the reviews are great, and the sales are mediocre, I would say.
Okay.
Right.
So then you said, time for another one.
Yes.
And you
What
went
do
to
next?
The Airplane.
Yes.
So
This is the sequel, really, because the father and son then found a company and start to build and test that airplane. And the very first chapter is the test of the airplane, and if it flies, the Army will buy a lot of them.
whoa.
However, it blows up in the first chapter, and the father is killed.
Whoa.
So that's how the book starts. And the rest of the book is kind of intrigue, but if you show the cover, the cover of the book, show it to the camera,
Yep.
that's a picture of West Point. And why did I put that on the cover is because, well, let me tell the story that inspired the book, really. Every so often, aircraft land in Westchester Airport that are World War II, genuine World War II relic aircraft. And they'll give you a ride on their aircraft.
Wow.
So I took a ride on a B-54, I believe it was, from the Westchester Airport. And we took off and headed up on the east side of the Hudson River. Now, that aircraft is not pressurized. As a matter of fact, it has huge windows on either side that are meant for guns to put in the window for air defense.
Wow.
So you can stand in the window, the wind is blowing by, and look out, and it's a breathtaking view, and you're only about 1,000, maybe 2,000 feet off the ground.
Wow.
Well, we went up the Hudson River, and I looked across the Hudson, and there's this little train going up on the other side of the Hudson on a, it was a freight train, it was going on a track, and I said, my gosh, I wonder where it goes. Well, we were going slowly, so we got to West Point, and I was able to follow the track, and it went right underneath West Point.
Wow.
Came out the other side.
Wow.
And I said to myself, whoa, you could blow up West Point if you had a bomb in that train. So that's kind of the driving force of the story. And there's a really thrilling ending, and of course everybody comes out okay.
Wow. All right, so now I'm going to ask you some questions about Karl Milde, author.
Yes.
Where, when, how do you write?
Okay. Very simple. I get up at 5:30 on Saturday morning. I write for maybe 3 hours and put a draft in the computer of the next chapter. Meanwhile, all week I've been thinking about what to say.
Yep.
So I'm, raring to go. And the rest of the weekend I rewrite and polish, and my wife, Cheryl, edits it, makes sure that the typos are gone, most of them. And by the way, she gives me a lot of good ideas for the story, but it's all about the story.
Yep.
So
you work it out in your mind. Now, does it flow pretty easily, or are there some chapters that drive you nuts?
Sometimes I can always write, but some chapters are harder than others. That's right.
So you're not one of those writers who suffers from writer's block, or
No.
are there times when?
No, I just when I'm having a rough patch and it's not flowing, and sometimes it really does flow, great. But when it doesn't flow, I just keep writing and then keep correcting and
let
finally
it find its way.
Yes,
That's good.
right, because I
That's
know
good.
where I'm
So
going.
you have a designated time. You write pretty much 5:30 to 8:30.
Yes, until
on a
Cheryl
Saturday.
comes down for breakfast.
Right. Now, do you write any other times? Or is that pretty much your writing time?
I'm writing always at
in
work.
your head.
But in terms of my thrillers, that's it. That's it. So
Okay.
it
Well,
takes 100 weeks to write a book.
Yeah, but you have a designated time.
Yeah.
You realize that not all writers write that way.
Well, I know they don't, but I can tell you this. I went to one, I've never really learned the craft except on my own. But I went to a weekend called Thriller Fest. It happens every year in New York City. All the famous thriller writers come, and they will spend 2 or 3 days telling you about how they do it. And most of them said that they try to write every day, turn out 2 or 3 pages. And they just keep working at it and working at it. And since they're doing it full time, they write 2 or 3 books a year.
I mean, writing's a discipline. One of the most amazing revelations for me was that not all writers are the same. I mean, there's writers who write first thing in the morning, much like you do.
Yes.
And a little bit every day.
Right.
Some write only once a week. Right. I write middle of the night because I can't write any other time. Otherwise, everybody's bothering me. Phone rings, the door. I make excuses to get up. Middle of the night, there's nothing else going on.
Right.
So that's the best time for me.
That's
and when I'm writing, that's when I write.
Right.
When I'm not writing, I don't. So when a book is hot, it's hot.
Right.
I'm not the kind that'll write all the time, all year round.
Right.
You know, when a book is ready to be written, that's when I write.
Okay.
Also, places. Where do you write? Kitchen table? Do you have a separate office at home?
We have an office at home.
An office at home. So you go into your office.
Yes.
It's your little man cave.
Right.
And you go in there and you do your thing in there.
Yes.
You have a computer?
Yes.
Desktop or laptop?
Definitely desktop, because I can't stand those little tiny keys.
Yes, okay.
Laptop.
That's a difference too. One of the things I like to stress for authors is that you need to find yourself as an author. You need to create your profile. When do you write? Where do you write? How do you write? You know, when I did Kiss the Candy Days Goodbye, I wrote that book all handwritten at the kitchen table. And little by little, I went to the Selectric typewriter, which was a great invention because you could write in different fonts.
Yeah.
Well, now, of course, with the computer, you can write about 8,000 fonts. But then that was a big thing.
Right.
Because when I wanted to do like a dream sequence, I could do it with italics.
Right.
And
I found that I was writing by hand at first, and I thought that was the only way it was going to flow for me.
Yep.
It wasn't. It took some doing to start typing.
Yeah. It took a
for the first
long
time.
road for me to get to the computer.
Yeah.
Then when I got to the computer, I realized, oh my God, editing was a piece of cake.
That's right.
Now, I didn't know how to type when I first started. So I had to hire high school kids to type my manuscripts.
Right.
Then if I wanted to change it, it was impossible. Because then you had to go through. If you were going to change 5 pages, then you had to change all the rest.
That's right.
It was unbelievable.
With the
expensive and just hard to do.
Right.
So then the computer came along. That made editing, again, a piece of cake.
I rewrite and rewrite all the time.
Me too.
Yes.
And that's what I tell a number of writers. It isn't the writing, it's the rewriting that takes the real time.
I just don't know how Mark Twain, for example, could have done it. He did it all by hand.
Oh, yeah. And Ray Bradbury said one time, someone said to him, how do you know when your book is ready?
Right.
And Ray Bradbury said, I know it's ready when I can read from the first word to the last word without making changes.
Oh.
And I thought, I don't think I could ever do that.
I couldn't get through the first paragraph without
No,
making
because
change.
I change all the time.
I can tell you this, though. At the Thriller Fest last July, Lee Childs was there. Now, he writes these books about Jack Reacher, and there's a movie out right now called Jack Reacher.
Yes, yes.
That was made from a book he wrote early on called One Shot, but now I think he's up to 15 books about Jack Reacher or so. But he was asked, well, do you rewrite? He said, never. I just write it out and send it to my publisher.
Oh my God!
I
don't know how that
I was
happens.
floored because I couldn't.
I mean,
do
when
that.
I was teaching school, I said to the kids all the time,
Yeah.
if I give you an assignment
Right.
that's due September 28th, don't write it September 27th.
Exactly.
Because it needs time.
Yes.
You need time to let it breathe, to read it over, because revision is part of the writing process.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, here's the big question for you. We have the commuter train. We have the airplane. What's next? The bus?
Well, it's funny that you say that. It's really the tractor trailer. Is I thought about, trains, planes, and automobiles. Well, automobiles are kind of boring, so I thought about maybe I could do something about the tractor trailer. And I came up with this concept of a modern Lone Ranger. I call him the Road Ranger, and he has a sidekick called Toronto because he comes from Toronto. So it's the book is called The Road Ranger, and
it's another thriller.
It's another thriller. The story of the Lone Ranger is that he and some other Texas Rangers were going through a canyon, and they were attacked by a gang of thugs, and everyone was killed, and they thought John Reed, that was his name, was also killed, but he wasn't. He was almost dead. But Tonto came along and took him back to his place of abode, wherever that was, and nursed him back to life. And that's the beginning of The Road Ranger.
And if you want to know the rest, you're going to have to wait for Karl to finish writing it. In the meantime, you do need to read The Commuter Train, and you need to read The Airplane. Yeah. Now, you can get them at your local bookstores.
Yes, and I have a website, milde.com, and you can then click on it and get to Amazon, and you can either get it for your Kindle or get a hard copy.
Well, you heard it here.
Yeah.
So that means that you need to get to the bookstore or get to Amazon.com. You need to buy these books, and you need to keep reading Karl Milde's books. Thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for joining us. And Karl, thank you for being a wonderful guest.
Thank you, Vinny, for being a host.
Our pleasure.
All right.